Those bald chicks are here to slay. Stop what you're doing, plug in and play. Those bald chicks will make your day. So stop what you're doing and say, those bald chicks.
Hello, you balding people, and welcome back to Those Bald Chicks, your favorite alopecia podcast. I'm Paige, and I'm here with the awesome Karli Rogers. You might know her because she's been on the podcast before. She joined TBC to help host an episode about alopecia in the workplace a little while back, and now she's here again to help me host this episode as well. Since it's September and it's Alopecia Awareness Month, we're going to go over a few topics, as well as some hair loss news updates that have happened over the last year or so. So welcome, Karli.
Hi, thanks for having me again.
I know, I'm so excited because we talked about you being on the show again.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so excited that you're here.
I'm really glad to be here again. It's super exciting. A lot has happened in the past year, both in my personal life, but also in the world of alopecia.
Yeah, no kidding. I feel like with having areata, obviously you guys probably know, if you don't, Karli has areata just like me. But with areata, I feel like both of our alopecia has changed so much since we last talked. So
absolutely.
Yeah, so that's wild too. I mean, how has your alopecia journey been so far? Since the last time we talked.
Since the last time we talked, oh my gosh. Well, just a quick recap on my experience. So I was diagnosed 13 years ago when I was 20 years old, 33 now. And I first just had some patches on the back of my head, and I was really freaked out about it. Didn't really have a ton of support in the early years of having alopecia. And then when I was 28, I started showing more visible patches on the sides of my head. And that's when I decided to go all out, get head tattoos, kind of just pull off the alternative hairstyle look, which has definitely changed me for the better. I feel like having alopecia be so visible has been very uplifting for me. However, after we last chatted, a lot of things have changed because I decided to cut my hair in November. So I think we had chatted maybe a few months before that, and I cut my hair, it was the shortest it had ever been. So I cut it above my ears. Very short for me. I usually have my hair to my shoulders or longer. So that was a different experience. Of course, I had an appointment made for a couple of months, and then as that appointment approached, I actually got into a pretty bad car accident. Somehow, miraculously, have been physically okay, but had a lot of trauma from that. And the hair appointment was only a week later. And I said, you know what? I'm going to get this. And I was like, sure, I'll keep going. It'll make me feel better. It'll be great. So I went ahead and did it. And it was an experience, I'll say that much. The woman who cut my hair was amazing. She was super supportive. And, for what I had on my head, she did a really great job. I, of course, myself did not feel as comfy with having short hair as I thought I would. But I think that also came with the trauma of almost dying and everything. So that's how that went. And then a few months later,
that's a lot all together. Oh my God.
I know, exactly. And so I may have gotten myself in a little too deep with that. But of course, I, spoke to my therapist immediately and went to weekly sessions. And now I'm in, bi-weekly to monthly sessions, which is great.
Yeah, that's great.
But since then, I've lost one of my eyebrows almost completely, which is a different experience for me.
Yeah.
The hair on my head still continues to come and go. But I think having something change on my face has been definitely new for me. And once again, an experience. And I notice it more than other people, of course. Although, when I have friends tell me that they don't notice it, I definitely say, Are you sure?
Yeah. Are you sure? Are you looking at the same person as me?
I'm pretty sure I'm not very symmetrical. I mean, I wasn't before, but now I'm very I'm not very symmetrical. So, however, I think I've, taken the right steps into healing a little bit more properly from that, whether it be the car accident, newly found alopecia. I have less and less hair on my arms over the last year. My arms are almost hairless right now.
Oh,
it's
wow.
wild. Some of the hair that's fallen out on one arm has come back, and then others have not. So it's been very strange. But some of the hair on my head is growing back really thick. So it's really complex, and I think it has a lot to do with the ups and downs of what's been happening in my life.
I was just gonna say, I feel like with all that happening in the beginning, a week before you got your hair cut and all of that, that's a lot. That's a lot of stress, a lot of trauma, a lot. You know what I mean? So I feel like you never know with alopecia, though. Is it because of all that, or is it just because alopecia is you know what, I'm just going to do my thing?
Exactly. And then winter happened. All of it just, winter happened.
Oh,
So it's been a roller coaster to say the least, but I think I'm like on the right path. I'm doing what I need to do to properly heal. It's never linear. Healing isn't linear,
you're
so
right.
I'm taking my time with it. But I think like talking about it is the most important thing, and talking
You
about it
got
with
it.
other people that have alopecia is super important.
Yep, 100%. Because I mean, since the last time we talked, my hair loss has been changing. I swear every day it's different.
Yeah.
Like I have patches on the front of my head now that I've never experienced. I don't even know where those came from. And my eyebrows are thinning out, so I have to color them in more. And it's like, what is going on? Could it be stress? Could it be life? Could it be whatever it is? So I'm right there with you. Yeah.
And and I enjoy seeing your pictures though, and I like that you're embracing it as much as you can. Like really interesting seeing like the changes in those patches, and I'm sure like it's always a mix of emotions, I'm sure. So
absolutely.
Like, how are you? Yeah.
I think like posting about it too kind of helps me in a venting way. Like that's a way to vent for me, because behind closed doors, what people don't see is all the sadness and all the what is going on. What am I supposed to do with this? Like,
exactly.
I've noticed with losing a lot of the front of my hair, I've been wearing wigs more, and I've been wearing wraps more, and I don't really want to look at it more. So it's like a year ago, I was rocking my shaved head all the time. And now because my hair loss is changing and it's different, I'm like completely different. I'm coping differently. So yeah, it's always changing for sure.
And it's not like necessarily a bad step to go back to hats or to go back to wigs or to feel like you need that comfort. I think that that's totally fine.
Right.
It happened to me when I cut my hair. We were thankfully kind of heading into winter. Like I said, the hairdresser did a good job, but I was not feeling like myself with that. Right. So I wore beanies 24/7. Like I finally saw some family members that I hadn't seen in a few months, probably towards the winter actually. And they looked at me and said, "Did you get your hair cut?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's been cut since November." They had no idea. They had no idea because I was wearing a beanie all the time, and I just did not feel comfy just wearing. Yeah. And even to this day, I've been wearing ball caps quite a bit, but right now it's almost at my chin and it's growing in. But once again, there's so much coming and going that it's hard to manage it. And for those who don't know, I usually wear my hair longer with I would say 70% of it being bald, but most of it's long, and it looks like an alternative hairstyle, even though it's just alopecia.
Yeah, it looks like one shaved side and then long on the other. Absolutely, exactly, I remember meeting you, and that was your style.
Yeah,
long. Yeah. So I get it with that. And what's weird is you were used to that, so for it to be that part to be changed, it's like a whole nother thing to overcome. Because cutting your hair is also hard too, isn't it? Cutting it's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think those baby steps gave me a good taste for just what I could prepare for emotionally with this, because, as we're learning to heal from the changes in the circumstance, right? Every little bit, you wouldn't think that cutting your hair would be part of it, but it absolutely does. And I've always said, "Oh, I could just shave my head and be fine," but I'm like, "Oh, would I? I mean,
would I? Right?
But that's all an internal, thing you have to learn."
Yeah, that's why areata is so weird too, because it's it's always so different. It's almost like if I had universalis or if I lost all my hair, you kind of be like, okay, well, this is what it is, my hair is probably not going to come back, and it's kind of just that's your answer. But with areata, you're always guessing, and it's it's wild.
Yes, it is. You're like, well, what's going to come next? I was expecting to lose all my eyebrow, and it just stopped. I'm like, well, why didn't you just take the whole thing? At this point, just take all of it. Just take all of it. What are you doing? Yeah, but also understanding yourself and understanding what other folks are going through. Talking about it. I know I don't talk about it as much on my social media as I did in the past. I'm working up to it, but seeing other folks talk about their alopecia is just a great way to spread awareness, first off, especially if your profile is public, and then also to get that conversation moving between people who have alopecia.
Absolutely. So, I feel that was important. That was my main thing too. When I first came out about alopecia, I was man, I feel like if I knew that there was a community, I would have just thrown myself in and said, I have alopecia, here's my life, and I would have saved myself years of worry and years of discomfort and all this. but I just never knew. Awareness is so important because it's like there's people out there that literally don't know about us, that have alopecia, that don't want to search it.
Yeah. And what percentage of, is it 1 to 2% of people have alopecia in some form, some way? Which is a lot.
Which is a ton of people. Yeah. When you look at it, when you look at the numbers, you're like, that's so many people that need to know there's a community.
Yeah. And that it exists. And like a lot of people, sometimes they'll only have one spot and be done with it. And they'll go back and be gone forever. Alopecia, that is. Other folks will deal with the coming and going of areata for a long, long time.
For a long time, right.
And then there's folks who have had alopecia since they were kids, and a whole different experience. So
right, and it's just a way of life. It was part of their life, so they don't really remember a life without it. Which is so wild because there's people that don't get it until they're adults, but there's people that get it when they're born, and that's just how they know. And I see people like that all the time, just confidently living their lives. And I'm like, man, I feel like me getting it as an adult with society was already in my head. I already knew about judgment and all this crazy. I was like, man, that if I got it as a kid, I feel like I would have been way more accepting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And also just knowing about it when you were a kid too, even just simply knowing that it existed, because the representation isn't there. And I know we were going to talk a little bit about that. Like there isn't, and there's still very little representation of alopecia to begin with. But I know you and I had talked about this in particular, but the representation of people with areata too is like nearly non-existent. I saw an ad, and I can't remember where the ad was based out of, that had a woman with alopecia just like rocking it. And I don't know if it was for like a store of some sort. You may have seen it, but I'm like, wow, like this is just a commercial about this product, not even a hair loss related product. They're just existing as is. And that is really awesome that they're just here. Like they're just there.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, it's really refreshing. Too. I almost now try and look for people that are bald, but I will say that I see more women and men that are completely bald than patchy. I feel like I barely see people with areata, and I don't know if that's just because it looks different than a bald head and it's just kind of patches of hair that we have. Maybe it's like more eye-popping to people to see patches of hair than just a bald head, you know what I mean? But it's really hard for me to see people with areata. Like I try to look. I'm looking everywhere for them, but I barely see them.
Can't find them. Where are they?
Where are they? Right. Where are my people? It's something else.
Yeah, right. It's funky. I don't know if it's because most people with areata tend to hide it. I mean, I will say, just in my experience, I hid it for a long time, and not just because I was like actually active about it. Like I have naturally thick hair, had naturally thick hair. So like the bald patches weren't visible unless like I had my hair in a way, like high ponytail, and like someone could see like some of the patches in the back maybe. And then sometimes like if the wind blew, but it wasn't as apparent as it is now for me.
I agree.
Especially now, like being on my face too. I'm like, okay, this is different. And now a little bit more striking than it was in the past. So
even with shaving your head too. Like if I shave my head, like even completely shave it, you can still see the design of my patches.
Right.
So I'm not even comfortable with that. Like, I feel like in my head, I might be more comfortable with just no hair up there and rocking it than my patchy head.
The patches.
Yeah, because it's such, like, even to me, I have a patchy head. Even to me, when I look at my hair, when I take a picture of it, I'm like, whoa, like that is, because I have dark hair and very fair skin.
Yep.
So it's like, whoa, you can see it from a mile away. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. It doesn't like blend in like blonde hair or, you know, like it just doesn't really, there's the contrast is more stark. And like your hairline it's not really hairline anymore. And so that's where,
it's just hair wherever.
Exactly. Yeah. And I've tried to explain this to a couple of people, coworkers, friends, family, etc., about why, because when they were asking, like, why did you cut your hair? What influenced your haircut? I'm like, well, I think just having alopecia really did. I wouldn't have cut it that short otherwise. And I try to explain this, like, whenever it gets really long and you have areata, the edges of those patches are thinner, and then those single hairs tend to pull on so many things, and like Yeah, I really liked, like, I saw some photos of myself recently with like longer hair. I'm like, oh, well, I did like enjoy that look. It looked more alternative. Like, I liked the way it
Absolutely.
looked. But then I was thinking about it, like the way it felt hurt. Like, it actually physically hurt. And I think that that's
Yep.
something that not many people think about when they think about having a patchy head, is that sometimes
Absolutely.
it's just the relief. I did have a lot of relief when I did cut my hair shorter
Yeah.
for that reason. Like, I was like, oh
Right.
my gosh, I only need to use like a little bit of shampoo.
Yep.
My hair only takes like 10 minutes to dry. What is this? This world.
I did the same thing though. Before I shaved my head, I chopped my hair like at my
Yeah.
chin.
Oh, wow.
I think probably close to a year. I had it
Okay.
because I was sick of my hair getting stuck on things and pulling
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I chopped it like a little bit shorter than this wig.
Yeah.
It was right at my
Yeah.
chin, and I loved it. It didn't get in
Uh-huh.
the way. It kind of looked thicker. I loved it. But then I was like, you know what? When I took my beanie off, when I took my hat off, it looked so scraggly because it was all over. I had patches everywhere. So it's not
Yeah.
like I could
Yeah.
flip it to one side or do whatever. But
Right.
I
Right.
said, I can't do this anymore. I can't look at
Yeah,
myself
yeah.
like this anymore.
Yeah, sometimes you get to that point because like, I am not in control of this. And that's where a lot of it comes down to. Like, that's another little key point to make about alopecia, is that like there's a lot of mental health aspects involved in it. And that includes like losing your self of control of yourself, what you want your self image to be versus like what it actually is. And then that need to control. So when I cut my hair, it was definitely me like taking action.
Yeah.
Even if I did not love the result for myself as much as I thought I would.
You were doing it because you could. That's the same with like with alopecia. You can't control what patch is going to come, how much hair is going to fall out, what you're going to lose. And I think that's a huge part of the mental health aspect of it, is you feel like you don't know what to do. You're at like a loss at what to do, and you don't know where to turn, because you're like, anything I do, I feel like my hair is falling out more, or nothing's helping it, or something like that. That in itself messes your mind up, because every day you're like, okay, when is it going to change? What's going to happen? And living like that, I mean, I haven't lived like that for a couple of years now, just because I don't pay attention to it as much. But I remember in the beginning, that was like every day. How I sat like at work, my neck was down. Oh my gosh, is my wig moving? Can people see the bald spots? Like, it was 24/7. So I can see why it's so important to talk about those parts of it, because people that don't deal with hair loss usually are like, oh, we'll just shave it. Like, it's so simple to just shave it. And you're like,
and there's the constant, saying of, oh, it's just hair. And of course we can get into that. I'm sure you've heard that on almost every single podcast you've recorded.
Yeah,
folks that say it's just hair is it's complicated is what it is.
Yeah.
It's very complex, and it's complicated, and there's so many other factors that I didn't realize. I wish I had gone to therapy way sooner than I started, because I didn't realize how much I actually needed it. And the fact that it's not like, of course, having someone who can relate to your problem is a little bit more helpful, but I want to say that like it has changed me so much for the better. It has helped me manage 100%. Like those negative thoughts that I've had, because it's all like alopecia creates this negative, for me at least, it creates like a negative feedback loop where I am not happy with a certain way that I look some days. Sometimes it's just day to day.
Right.
And sometimes you feel like you're like extra confident. I mean, I don't feel like 100% confident ever, but
yeah, right.
but then I don't have those bad days as much, where I feel like I could go out without a hat on. I could go out and go out as I am, and absolutely. I'm not going to be concerned about it. And then other days, you might want that comfort of wearing a hat.
100%.
And it's not that simple. It's not as simple as like saying like, yeah, I can just like bury this and go on with my day. That's why I still feel empathy towards folks that have bio hair and they don't have alopecia.
Right.
And they say they have a bad hair day. I'm like, you know what? You're allowed to have it. You're allowed to have a bad hair day. That's okay. Right. Like, I understand it's different than mine, but
right. But still, I get it.
That's the same feeling, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's the same feeling.
Absolutely. I feel like a huge thing to kind of go over in regards to like mental health and alopecia is doing research. We obviously found a lot of stuff in regards to mental health. One of the things, or one of the first things that pops up when you start to experience hair loss is something called social phobia, which we all know. It's been our best friend since we got diagnosed. A lot of people that have had alopecia for their whole life or just got diagnosed have had a sense of social phobia. It's hard to go out, talk to people, and just live your day-to-day life when hair loss feels like it's holding you back. That's why awareness, spreading far and wide, lets us reach those certain individuals so they can join the community and not feel alone anymore. In this wonderful community, people will be able to get advice, learn about all their options when it comes to their hair loss, and just get the information that they need to kind of see where they want their journey to play out. That's what I think is really interesting, is like how my hair loss since I came out publicly has had a lot of influence with people I know with alopecia. So I thought that was interesting because I thought, oh, I'm kind of having to do this on my own. And sure, there's a community to talk to, but I'm still living my life alone. But then I realized all advice, people that what they've gone through, people they've talked to, things they've done with their alopecia, I've kind of just taken all that in and then made it my own part of my journey, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Totally. Like what you've done here, even like kind of organized and bundled up everyone's experiences and coming from different parts of the world and different ways of life and experiences with alopecia. I think you've definitely like summed it up really nicely. And that is a part of awareness too. Right. Having those conversations and having this available for people that may not be comfortable talking about it, because that's like the number one thing is even the fear of, like you said, that social phobia comes into play. It even comes into play even if you have that similar experience with somebody. They may be a little bit more worried about coming out about it to other people that have that same experience because they have never had the support system before.
Absolutely.
And like offering a support system or conversation or just even media about it is
You're not kidding.
So important because it offers that comfort. When you had started the podcast a couple of years ago, I was like, wow, this is like so relatable and so comforting to hear people like saying like literally you're pulling the thoughts out of like out of my brain.
Yeah,
how
it's like someone is literally
that?
reading your brain. Yeah.
Like how, absolutely. What? Are you kidding me? Like that's amazing. And then also having like those Discord and support groups with other folks that have alopecia. Yeah, you may not have a ton of similarities as people, but like you're still sharing
this experience. Right. Yeah. It's such a bonding moment. Absolutely. And I feel like kind of playing into that, obviously community is a big part of the journey. And it's one of the best parts is because you feel like you're part of something instead of being a lone wolf somewhere. So kind of touching on the importance of awareness for the medical field and dermatologists playing into that is obviously we've had our experiences with dermatologists. Everybody has. That's the first thing you do, or somebody suggests you to go to the dermatologist, get checked out. And then that dermatologist usually says, okay, these are your options. And it's usually all medical and injections and creams and all this stuff to cure you instead of, oh, well, there's a huge community. Oh, have you thought about going to support groups? Have you thought about going to therapy? I never got that. And I know a ton of people have experienced that too, where it was straight into getting shots in your head. And it was so terrifying because it all happened all at once. And I wish that more dermatologists and people in the medical field knew about this community, knew that, just quickly go onto Instagram and you will find your people. Because that's where like mainly they are, I've noticed. But even like me, when I first got diagnosed, I went to Reddit and I was terrified. I knew that there was tons of people, but Reddit was like all people that were scared and didn't know of anybody. It was just kind of venting and you didn't really have friends on there. So it was like the one place I went to. But once I found out about this community, it changed my life. And I feel like more dermatologists to talk about that.
Absolutely. I agree. That's been, I'm sure, like 90% of people's experiences going to dermatologists getting diagnosed, because it's also, I mean, in my opinion, very predatory because someone is diagnosed with alopecia for the first time, especially in whether it be young adulthood or even when they're a teen, just no matter, honestly, any point in their life. And they're scared and concerned. And then they immediately want to find a solution. And so the dermatologist is that person in front of you. And they're the ones immediately saying, oh, your only options are this, and this prescription. And that's it. But that also gives you a false sense of hope And
Yeah.
once again, there's no mention of support groups or just how it can affect your mental health at all. Like when I got
Right.
diagnosed, I remember like getting a biopsy done and then going off to college and then getting a call a week later and they were like, yeah, you have alopecia areata. Click. And I was like, okay. And I called
Need
back
more
and I was like,
information.
excuse me, so what can I do about this? What does this mean? And they were like, oh, well, it can progress, but like, just you can come in and get injections in your scalp and then maybe it'll grow back. And I'm like, okay. So then I ended up doing it because I was scared. I didn't know what it meant
same
for me.
here.
And that's exactly what happens to so many people. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure you can, like, you didn't have, I mean, you said you went on Reddit. I was on some other forums that sounded very similar where I was a cesspool of negativity.
Oh.
Like very negative, very scared folks. And
Yes.
of course, like sharing those negative experiences is important too. But if it's just that,
right.
It's rough. Then it makes you feel like, oh my gosh, this is how it's going to be for me
for the rest of my life. You got it. That is exactly how I felt too. I was like,
totally.
Well, I guess this is my fate.
Yeah.
Like, I guess I'll just have to be sad and depressed for the rest of my life by myself. That's how I felt too.
Yeah,
and even like the dermatologist, it was traumatic going there. I had anxiety. I was freaking out in my car before the appointment. I felt like half the time I didn't even want to go in because it was so vulnerable. I had to take off my hat and unclip my extensions and just show them my scraggly hair. And they weren't even like inviting about it. It was just all traumatic. And I just wish that would change a bit for people that are new to alopecia.
Yeah, totally. Well, you would hope that bedside manner would change a little bit, especially for folks that are dealing with this, because it's to a lot of people, it's seen as just cosmetic, and that is not the case.
And that's not the case.
Absolutely not the case. But that's like the main focus, though. But I guess like on that note, though,
I'm gonna pause. We have 1 minute left.
Oh shoot! Okay.
So this is gonna be a two-parter. I knew it was going to because we have a ton of information. So obviously we have a lot to go over on Alopecia Awareness Month. We love to talk, which everybody in the alopecia world knows that. But we're gonna have part 2 coming to you this month as well. So look out for that.